Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, December the 19th, 2023. Today I want to talk about drugs with particular reference to the autopsy report of Matther Perry. I don't know much about him. He apparently was an actor. He acted in Friends. I never watched Friends, but I did look at his horoscope some time ago, shortly after he died. I considered why he might have died astrologically. I think it would have been fairly easy, relatively easy at least, to predict that he was in real danger at the time he died. Now, I don't want to go through all of that all over again. I want to have another look at his chart just to point out that his chart had danger of drug death written all over it. So I do want to look at that. Now, as far as the drugs are concerned, let me just show you what The Guardian said. So The Guardian, talking about him, has his title, Matther Perry died of acute effects of ketamine, autopsy report says. And then it goes on to say, Matther Perry died of the acute effects of ketamine, the Los Angeles Medical Examiner said on Friday. The Friend star was found unresponsive in the pool at his residence on the 28th of October and pronounced dead at the age of 54. The medical examiner ruled that the manner of death was an accident. Perry, who rose to stardom playing Chandler Bing in the US sitcom Friends, was reportedly receiving ketamine infusion therapy for depression and anxiety before his death, Variety reported. A post-mortem examination concluded Perry died from the acute effects of ketamine, while contributing factors included drowning, coronary artery disease, and the effects of buprenorphine, which is used to treat opioid use disorder. So already we've got a bit of a mystery there, haven't we? So he's having this infusion therapy, which, as I understand it, is quite low dose. Yet he dies of the acute effects of ketamine. So he perhaps was taking ketamine outside his infusion therapy. Is that the logic for that? So what I wanted to consider is actually ketamine and the astrology of ketamine and the astrology of its precursor chemical. So I did say I wanted to talk about drugs. And don't worry, I will be talking about the astrology for today. I'm just in this introduction. I just want to really talk about my logic for looking at particular charts later on. Now, I found this article in the journal Astrology, and it's titled "Taming the Ketamine Tiger" by Edward Domino and David Warner, and it was published in September 2010. And so this article is really interesting. I mean, I find it interesting. It sort of talks about the history of ketamine and its precursor chemical. So it starts by saying that the strange story of ketamine begins with two Park Davis, Detroit, Michigan scientists. A medicinal chemist, Harold Maddox, PhD, discovered a new chemical organic Grignard reaction. It led to the synthesis of phencyclidine, which was later given the clinical investigation number CI395 on March 26, 1956. So March 26, 1956 is therefore an important date, because it's a date, according to this article, in which phencyclidine was synthesized. And from phencyclidine, other chemicals were produced. Now, I don't know, have you heard of phencyclidine? It's more commonly known as angel dust. So ketamine is actually produced from angel dust. Now, angel dust, it's got quite a bad reputation. Maybe people aren't so obsessed about angel dust anymore because they're more worried about fentanyl. But I can remember long ago, I was in the Compendium bookshop in Camden Town, and there was this book. I was browsing, and there was this book on the front cover. It had a little pile of white powder and these angel wings coming out of it. And I don't know whether these stories are true, but with angel dust, it was said that people could break out of handcuffs on angel dust. Even, short, tiny people, a short, tiny woman could, throw policemen across the street and things like that on this drug. And so, someone might take angel dust thinking it was harmless and then come round from it and find out they've killed a load of people. So it had a really bad reputation, and this article describes how it seems to mimic schizophrenia, and so from a psychiatric point of view, it was interesting. But phencyclidine, or angel dust, was considered to be a possible anesthetic. But then it was discovered that its side effects, its psychological side effects, were just too much. So what happened, as this article describes, is that they used phencyclidine to find other chemicals. That's why phencyclidine is a sort of precursor chemical to loads of other things. And this article goes on to say that one of them, which was, I think, synthesized in 1962. So here we go. He submitted his compounds to preclinical pharmacological testing, and one of the agents produced excellent anesthesia and was short-acting. It was selected for human trials as CI581 and is now known as ketamine. So it was in 1962 that ketamine was synthesized. Then it goes on to say, one day in early 1964, the author was called. He was asked if I was interested in doing a clinical pharmacology study, and he agreed. And so when we talk about the first experiment, so the first human was given ketamine in an intravenous sub-anesthetic dose on August the 3rd, 1964. Gunter and I gradually increased the dose from no effect to conscious but spaced out, and finally to enough for general anesthesia. Our findings were remarkable. The overall incidence of side effects was about 1 out of 3 volunteers. And I think, I'm not sure on this, that the first volunteers were prisoners. So I think that was right. I think it might have taken place in Jackson Prison in Minnesota, Michigan. So we've got some dates here. So we've got the date of the first human trial of ketamine, which was August the 3rd, 1964. So we can set up a chart for that. We can also set up a chart for the synthesis of phencyclidine. So the moment that, well, not the moment, but certainly the day that phencyclidine was first synthesized. So that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do in this video. So it's kind of a bit particular, but I will be talking about the astrology and the I Ching. And I should say, if you like this video, do indicate that you like it on the like button. If you're not subscribed, feel free to subscribe, and if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So let me now move to the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, December the 19th, 2023. So here we go. So I haven't got a photograph here of a person. Instead, I have got a molecule. Is that a molecule? Yeah, that's a ketamine molecule. So let's look at what's going on today. So the moon today is in Pisces for most of the day and possibly all of the day. So at noon, New York time, the moon is at 26:38 Pisces. So that means that if you are in London, the moon will go into Aries at 10:47 p.m. So if you're in London, you'll get just over an hour right at the end of the day of the moon being in Aries. If you're in Paris, Berlin, whatever, the moon will go into Aries at 11:47 p.m. So you'll have 13 minutes right at the end of the day of the moon being in Aries. If you're in Eastern Europe, Asia, Australasia, the moon is going to be in Pisces all day. If you're, on the other hand, if you're in, so New York, moon goes into Aries 5:47 p.m. In Los Angeles, it goes into Aries at 2:47 p.m. So on the West Coast, Pacific coast of America, you're going to have, the last half of the day, last part of the day, certainly the moon is going to be in Aries. But there's going to be a chunk of a day anyway where the moon is in Pisces, and so with the moon in Pisces, you'll notice that it is conjunct Neptune. So when you've got Moon-Neptune conjunction, you can expect a certain amount of chaos. Things aren't going to be entirely clear. There could be some fog. It's very emotional, moon conjunct moon conjunct Neptune. We're going to be very sensitive to what's going on around us, but perhaps a bit too sensitive. So we mustn't allow ourselves to be completely overwhelmed by it all. And while that is going on, Mercury is exactly 135 degrees from Uranus. So you've got a Mercury-Uranus sesquiquadrate. Mercury-Uranus sesquiquadrate is about mental agitation. Things are going to keep coming up, and we're going to get maybe annoyed, and we're going to be, some of us at least, are going to be quite verbally impulsive. We'll just say things. We just can't help it with Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus. And we might say things that we later regret. On the other hand, it might be the case that we're able to restrain ourselves, but the people around us might say things that aren't particularly advisable. So watch out for that, and don't overreact. On the plus side, I suppose Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus might allow us to have some amazing thoughts. We might suddenly have some inspiration. Now, that inspiration may be crazy. We shouldn't act on our inspirations. I've talked about this, I think, yesterday as well, that Mercury is retrograde. If we act on our inspirations, we might soon find that they're false inspirations, or we're getting excited about something which is a dead end. So, be careful about that. One other thing about today's astrology is that the Sun is on the galactic center. Now you can see that the Sun 2731 Sagittarius. So the galactic center is supposedly, I think, the center of the galaxy, and you can sort of pinpoint it as being at the end of Sagittarius. And it's going to be here every year at sort of mid-December, mid to late December. The Sun will be here, but it is a time of year when we can be quite cosmic. We can think beyond our material environment. We can think about the world and cosmos at large. So, if we can sort of tune into this, sort of think about not just our everyday, the world right here, but the world beyond us. That's certainly something to consider. So allow yourself to have cosmic thoughts. Okay, so that's the astrology for today. To be honest, it's not that exciting. I don't think there's a huge amount going on. Okay, there is some Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus, so there could be some mental agitation, verbal outbursts, but I doubt that for most of us it's going to be a spectacular day. But I will now consider you, all of us, from a perspective of our star sign, and I will look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, December the 19th, 2023. Aries. There is a lot going on behind the scenes, and I mean this on a psychological as well as a physical level. People saying one thing, thinking and feeling something completely different, and you yourself are distracted, and when you watch yourself, it may feel that you are like part of a film. So really, it's a time to accept the richness and variety of your unconscious world. Taurus. You're in a sociable mood, and you'll want to interact with as many people as possible. But what are you hoping to gain? Is it a feel-good thing? The reality is that other people could be a problem in terms of wasting your time and causing general confusion. Also, there are some things you don't want to reveal or give away. So privacy is golden. Gemini. There comes a point where you're just spinning your wheels, making a lot of noise but going nowhere. So consider the possibility that today's obsession, whatever it might be, is a road to nowhere. Though it's not about giving things up for good. It's all about taking a step back and asking yourself what you're really trying to achieve. Cancer. You're losing some of your grounding, getting involved with things you don't fully understand. reaching for the unreachable. But it's okay, provided you don't make major commitments or throw too much time and money at a problem. Besides, it won't be long before your priorities become a lot more realistic. Leo, you still want to reach for the stars, but you understand that everything needs preparation. And you also have to evaluate the people around you. Not all of them are being straightforward, and you shouldn't take what they say at face value. And what sounds reassuring could actually be a trap. Virgo, the moon is moving through the last degrees of Pisces. Relationships are in a state of flux, especially as the moon is making a conjunction to Neptune. You're not sure which way things are moving, and there's plenty of fog. This means that you should rely on what you have already worked out, rather than make new calculations. Libra, today might feel unsatisfactory. There just isn't anything to apply yourself to, and even if you work hard, the results might be less than satisfactory. So perhaps you should just accept the situation. You can't expect every day to be action-packed, and you should be focusing on looking after yourself, and you should be in an environment of your choosing, somewhere where you feel comfortable. And if you can do that, then everything should be fine. Scorpio, you've got strange tastes. At least today you have. And the things that appeal to you might not appeal to other people. It's not a matter of right or wrong, rather a question of individuality against a social and cultural background, where there might be a sense in which you and this background might be somewhat different, might be a certain sense of estrangement. Nonetheless, if you take anything too far, then the fun might quickly run dry. So it's important to have some self-discipline. Sagittarius, you want to move forward, but your progress may be frustrated. Annoying things could hold you back, and things and people that you thought could be trusted might turn out to be as good as useless. It might be best to slow down and to restrict yourself to what you truly know. Or you could plough forward and ignore all distractions. Capricorn, as you probably know, Mercury is moving retrograde through your star sign. There are things you want to say, but it can be difficult getting the words out, and even then the results might not be satisfactory. A few words can cause a lot of problems. Perhaps you'll overestimate the intelligence of your audience. Aquarius, the moon is making a trine aspect to Venus. This could be quite useful in terms of allowing you to relate to the world around you. Indeed, you can use your social skills to leverage various opportunities, perhaps relating to money or business. At the same time, you'll be good at hiding your real intentions. Pisces, many people are having a difficult day and are finding it almost impossible to get anything done, but I don't think you're too bothered. You've seen it all before, and your emotional intelligence should allow you to make good progress. A Moon-Venus trine aspect brings contacts from far away. So that's the astrology of today. So let's now switch to the I Ching. So I start off by asking a question. So my question was, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was this, the creative. I think that many of us are going to feel a powerful creative force. It's not a force that can be rationalized. It's not even a force that that specifically wants to go in any one direction. It's just pure creativity. It's the pure creative impulse, and you just want to do something. You want to initiate something, but you have to do it in the right way. In the first instance, when you feel that creative impulse, you probably need to keep it to yourself, particularly at the beginning of the day. Yes, you want to make things happen, but your timing might be wrong. The first situation you meet is just not going to be the right place for you to be super creative. You have to be patient. But as the day progresses, there'll be more and more opportunities for you to express yourself, and your influence is going to grow. And so it's at this stage that you start to have the capacity to really make things happen, and that raw creative energy can start to be transferred into the outside world, and you can start to create real change. And then the fifth line moves, and it gets better. You have more and more chances to make things happen, but don't try and do everything on your own. The I Ching counsels us with that fifth line moving on the number one, the creative hexagram. Get some help. You don't. I know that creativity sounds like a very personal thing, but it's not. In order to really, really make things happen, to make a big impression, make a big impact, you need some outside help. But don't worry, the help is definitely available. Now, this hexagram, the creative, because you've got three moving lines, the first line, bottom line moves, third line moves, and fifth line moves, that means it changes, it transforms to a second hexagram, and it changes to this 64 before completion. Now, there are 64 hexagrams in all in I Ching, so this is the last hexagram in the book. And before completion means we're not there yet. So there's something you want to do, there's something you want to complete, but you're not there yet. And the image that I Ching gives is of a fox, a small fox, trying to perhaps cross a river or some ice. It's nearly there, but it's not quite there. And in that moment, just before completion, there is a danger of making a mistake, specifically falling in the water. The Wilhelm translation likes to give the symbolism of the fox getting its tail wet, and that's considered to be unfortunate. So we have to be really careful in that last moment. We're really close, but we're not there yet. So reaching the other side of a river is going to be a delicate process. The fox, the small fox, he's very small, and the river is very big. If that small fox isn't careful, could get swept away. So just make sure you see it through to completion, and just be really careful. So those two hexagrams together give the whole flow of things. It's like having a creative impulse, holding on to it, starting to see progress, and then the project starts to come into being, and we start to reach the completion of what we're trying to do, but we're not quite there yet, so don't mess it up right at the end. Okay, so let me turn back to the astrology, and I am going to start by going back to Matther Perry's horoscope. Now, this is a man who he's had drug issues through his life. He's had which have led to all sorts of health issues, and I think the drug issues are certainly there in his chart. So so Matther Perry was a Leo, born born August 19th, 1969, and you can see that he has Sun in Leo, square Neptune. Sun square Neptune is a classic for drug issues. The Sun in Leo is about his self, who he is, and Neptune is that force which undermines it, which sort of disintegrates. But it also might represent his desire to be part of something, beyond himself. I suppose escaping. You can sort of escape from reality by moving beyond one's material self. Now, one could experience that through spirituality, finding God or whatever, but one can also find it through drugs. And I believe he was very certain of. I think he took the view that if you are an addictive personality, it's pretty much impossible to break free. This idea that you are an addict for life. It's part of who you are. You can't just decide one morning to not take drugs. It's just not like that. And that's his Sun square Neptune. He feels that it's very much. He did feel that it's very much part of who he was, and it's not something he could just stop very easily. Now, what else? Okay, lots of people have Sun square Neptune. That does not mean that they have drug problems. It doesn't mean that they die of ketamine poisoning or die of drug overdose. The thing is, though, his Mars Saturn midpoint is at 2535 Aquarius. So there's his Saturn, there's his Mars. You can see by eye that the Mars Saturn midpoint is around 25 Aquarius. So that means that he has Neptune square his Mars Saturn midpoint. The Mars Saturn is about frustration. It's about just feeling that there's something one can't release. And Neptune being square the Mars Saturn midpoint, it perhaps provides that release. It provides a certain sense of relaxation. But also the Mars Saturn pair is connected with death. And so if you have got Neptune on your Mars Saturn midpoint, it is possible that you die because of a drug overdose. That's not the only way you can use the symbolism of Neptune. Neptune's god of the sea. You could drown. That's another possibility with Neptune. And so, going back to his death, acute ketamine intoxication in a tub in water. Neptune on the Mars Saturn midpoint, that is classic, isn't it? It completely and utterly describes his death. Now, looking at the actual death, which let's have a look at it. His death. There we go. So that's in the middle is Matther Perry's chart. On the outer wheel is the positions of the planets approximately when he died. I think I've taken 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think. So Neptune was fairly close to being sesquiquadrate his ascendant. And, you know, as I've discussed in the previous video, the ascendant is probably his high leg. You spell that Hyleg. And the high leg in astrology is like the giver of life. And so if something makes a bad aspect to the giver of life, then your life may be in danger. And so Neptune was sesquiquadrate, his ascendant, which is not great, but okay, it wasn't exact. But let's look at other stuff. You can see that Mars, when he died, was at 1054 Scorpio. So Mars was exactly square his ascendant. And, sorry, Mars was at 1128 Scorpio. So Mars was just moving away from his ascendant. But then Mercury has come in at 1054 Scorpio. The fast planet Mercury came in, made the square to Neptune, and that was the final thing that killed him. You'll also notice that when he died, Saturn was at 033 Pisces, and there's his 8th house cusp. 8th house Placidus cusp was at 1 degree 5 minutes Pisces. Death in the water. Saturn on his 8th house cusp. You know, normally when Saturn hits your 8th house, you don't think about death. I mean, I know you might, but the 8th house is connected with death, but you think about other things, deep emotions, perhaps other people's money, that kind of thing. But yes, death is linked with the 8th house, and he had Saturn crossing into his 8th house, and that's to an extent what killed him. Now, as far as the drug is concerned, ketamine, the autopsy seems to give ketamine a prime place in his death. I don't know. I suppose if you're in a bathtub and you take an anesthetic, even if the anesthetic is not toxic, but the anesthetic knocks you out, that's as good as killing you, isn't it? I mean, if you go under the water because you're unconscious, well, you're dead, aren't you? So, you know, and I think sort of drowning was sort of part of it. And so, which made me think about the astrology of ketamine and the astrology of PCP, which is the precursor chemical. So this is a chart for the synthesis of PCP, which, according to the article I was reading at the beginning of this video, happened on March the 26th, 1956. Now, I am not saying that this chart is wonderfully descriptive of PCP. I just know that that's the date it was found, the date it was synthesized. So let's see if we can find something in that chart that seems to fit what we were dealing with. Now, that is set for noon. That chart is set for noon in Detroit, Michigan. Now, you will notice that there is a full moon on that day. And so it is probably sensible to kind of set the chart for the full moon, which, hold on, there's another one there. There we go. That's the full moon in Detroit, Michigan, for March the 26th. 1956. So what I find interesting about this chart is the position of Uranus and Neptune. Now, at that time, 1956, in the sky, there was a square between Uranus and Neptune. So there's Uranus 2816 Cancer, Neptune 2941 Libra. Now, this would have been around for a long time. Sort of, I assume, I haven't really looked at the precise planetary positions, but for much of 1956, this Uranus-Neptune square would have been around. But at the time of the full moon, and I think the synthesis happened in or around Detroit, you can see that Uranus is pretty close to the IC. So Neptune was square the midheaven, and Uranus was on the IC. So you could say that if you take Reinhold Ebertin's description of the Uranus-Neptune pair, Reinhold Ebertin, he uses this wonderful phrase, elimination of the waking consciousness, which kind of describes what phencyclidine was doing. I mean, it's meant to be an anesthetic, and I think that it goes further than that. I think people on phencyclidine are describing this sort of lack of sensation of their bodies. Maybe this is how people who are having really bad side effects might be able to do stuff. I don't know whether people can literally tear apart handcuffs. But I suppose in order to do that, I think there was this story about someone breaking, they were handcuffed, they were able to break the handcuffs, and in the process they broke their wrists or something. But I suppose that would suggest a disassociation. I mean, elimination of a waking consciousness, if you could really do that on phencyclidine, on angel dust. So I thought that was interesting. But I'm not claiming that this chart wonderfully describes the synthesis of a new anesthetic, which brings me to the chart of the first time that ketamine was tested on a human subject. So the chronology went, 1956, phencyclidine was synthesized. It was found to be not suitable because of its psychological effects on people who took it. But after it worked as an anesthetic, but after coming round, people's response was often not desirable. Then there was an attempt to synthesize other chemicals on the basis from phencyclidine. In 1962, ketamine was synthesized, I believe, but I don't know what date in 1962. But 2 years later, 1964, ketamine was tried on a human subject, and I believe, may be wrong on this, that it was a prisoner, and so here is a chart for the first human trial of ketamine. This was August the 3rd, 1964. Now, what I find interesting about this is what was going on. What was going on at the time of this first trial. Neptune went direct about a week earlier. Sorry, Neptune, is it retrograde? Where's Neptune? No, Neptune. Yeah, there's Neptune. So Neptune was basically at a standstill. It went, I think it went stationary at, I think it was on July the 27th, 1964. So that really emphasizes Neptune. But Neptune went direct at around 15 degrees 5 minutes Scorpio. There, 15 degrees 5 minutes Scorpio. You know, so you might say, well, so what? Well, the point is that Neptune is sesquiquadrate the Aries point. So there's the Aries point there. So when you have a planet that's, 3/8 of a circle from the Aries point, that makes that planet very important. The Aries point, Aries represents the collective. And so Neptune sesquiquadrate the Aries point, the idea of a new drug coming into the collective, the experiment taking place, and as I demonstrated, as I read from that article at the beginning, it was very successful. And so Neptune came into being. Also, you'll notice on August the 3rd that the Sun is making a square aspect to Neptune. The Sun at 11:21 Leo was making a square aspect to Neptune. So that fits for the trial of a drug, having Sun square Neptune. Now the Sun was at 11:21 Leo. And if we look at Matther Perry's chart, he had his Sun at 10:42 Leo. I don't know whether that means anything. But his ascendant was pretty much the same degree as where the Sun was at the time of the first person taking ketamine. And of course he was taking it in a therapeutic sense, but I'm not convinced that I don't think that the smaller doses he'd be taking in his therapeutic his infusions of ketamine was that the dose that killed him? Possibly not. He may have got it from elsewhere. So there may be a link there. And of course Matther Perry has Sun square Neptune, and of course there was Sun square Neptune at the time of the first human, time a human took ketamine in early August 1964. Now the thing about Neptune being on the Aries point, I think this is an important point, particularly now, because Neptune right now. Let's look at the positions of the planets right now. Neptune is at 24:56 Pisces. So we're getting close to the Aries point, not just sesquiquadrate the Aries point. We're moving towards a conjunction of the Aries point. Now, next year, on July the 2nd, 2024, Neptune goes stationary retrograde at 29 degrees 56 minutes Pisces. It gets so close to the Aries point. It goes backwards. Then on March the 30th, 2025, Neptune again hits the Aries point. So why am I saying this? I'm suggesting that maybe some new drug is going to be synthesized, perhaps. It may have, probably will be, I think. It's going to be a recreational importance. A drug which will be widely used recreationally. And who knows what it will do, whether it might be something quite horrific. Was it that film Judge Dredd? I think it was that. I didn't see the whole film. I saw the beginning of a film, but one of the drugs available was a drug that slowed down time, and it very interesting. But could be used in horrific ways. If you want to inflict pain on people, then you give them this drug that slows down time to make it even worse. Yeah, that sounded really bad, and it's kind of a very dystopian kind of drug. So perhaps someone's going to create some dystopian drug, which will become very popular as society breaks down and we move into a Judge Dredd society. Anyway, I'm speculating there, but I just want to remind everyone that Neptune is very soon going to cross the Aries point. Okay, that's enough about drugs. I think I've said as much as I want to say. I hope you haven't found that too boring. Well, of course, if you had found it boring, you would have left the video by now, wouldn't you? So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.